Hi and welcome back to the House of the Dragon Explained series. This is going to be a series of character analysis videos for all major characters of our new show House of the Dragon. I won't reveal endgame stuff or spoil any major events, but be aware there are going to be a few minor spoilers in this video. Please also keep in mind that I consider everything we've seen in the teaser trailers to be spoiler free as well. With that out of the way, let's get into it. We started off the greens with Otto Hightower a couple of days ago, which means that it's time to switch back to the blacks and, in this case, Rhaenyra Targaryen. But who is Rhaenyra Targaryen? Rhaenyra is the firstborn child of King Viserys Targaryen. She was the only living child from Viserys' first marriage to Aemma Arryn and was proclaimed heir to the Iron Throne, which we can see in the trailer. Viserys called all the lords of the Seven Kingdoms to swear fealty to her. She's 8 in the source material when she's named heir, but just like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon seems to have changed the age of some of the characters to make it more convenient, but more on that later. During her childhood, Rhaenyra was loved all throughout Westeros and was commonly known as Realm's Delight. She became a dragon rider at 7 years old. That's when she was mounting her dragon Syrax for the very first time. Yes, just a 7-year-old kid casually riding a dragon. You know, just the usual. Rhaenyra was very close to her father and became his personal cupbearer. They had a great relationship, which resulted in her being shaped to rule from a very young age. The matter of succession was causing a lot of drama, especially given that the Great Council, in which Viserys was chosen as successor to Jaehaerys Targaryen, also decided that women could not inherit the Iron Throne. That didn't matter to Viserys because he still decided to make Rhaenyra his heir, and they all lived happily ever after. If not for Alicent Hightower, Otto Hightower's daughter, who became King Viserys' second wife. Alicent and Rhaenyra got along well at first, but this didn't last for too long. The two grew very distant after Alicent gave birth to Rhaenyra's half-brothers, and it only got worse from there. This is where our two fractions come into play. The Greens, Alicent's side, and the Blacks, Rhaenyra's side. Otto tried to convince Viserys to declare Alicent's son to succeed him, but Viserys still stood by his decision and even removed Otto from his position as Hand of the King. Just like Daemon, Rhaenyra had quite an interesting love life. In typical Targaryen inbred fashion, we can see her marrying her uncle Daemon in the trailer, and we also get a few glimpses of her first marriage to Laenor Velaryon, with whom she has 3 children. They're not his. She also grew quite fond of another major character of House of the Dragon, but given that the circumstances of that relationship are not even revealed in the source material, we'll have to wait and see. Although there's a lot of tension between blacks and greens, the peace is kept up until King Viserys dies. What follows is the start of the Targaryen Civil War, the Dance of the Dragons. But let's move on to our next point. What can we expect from Rhaenyra Targaryen? This one is going to be tricky when it comes to keeping it spoiler free, but let's try it anyway. First of all, we can expect 2 Rhaenyras. House of the Dragon will have separate timelines, which is why they cast this role twice. I think that's a great idea, and it'll help establish House of the Dragon as its own thing. Game of Thrones only had one flashback scene with Cersei in season 5, and a couple of visions of Bran, so this is going to be quite refreshing. It's an entirely different style of storytelling compared to Game of Thrones. They have to be careful when it comes to not confusing the general audience too much. If done right, however, this allows these characters to have unique character development, because we actually get to see how they were before the Civil War started. It opens up a lot of possibilities, and it'll be interesting to see how they approach it. Will we only get young Rhaenyra in the beginning, and Emma Darcy takes over at some point in season 1? Will they show Rhaenyra both young and old simultaneously? Will the flashbacks or the separate timelines continue in season 2? I'm really curious to see the transition from young to adult Rhaenyra. It's very important to understand where these characters are coming from, especially for this character. I think we will spend a lot of time with Rhaenyra and Viserys early on, and I'd love that. As I was mentioning before, they had a great relationship, and this would add a bittersweet facet for what's about to come. It'll be interesting to see Rhaenyra in King's Landing in general, whether it be with her father, with her uncle Daemon, or with young Alicent. The scenes of the younger version of Rhaenyra will lay the foundation of her character. She's going to learn to be a player of the Game of Thrones, and I hope we get to see a lot of that in season 1. They really have to do it justice and also show how loved she was before we get the darker Fire and Blood version later on. We can see her talking to the queen who never was, Rhaenyra Targaryen, in the trailer. This scene is most likely about the Great Council and the fact that women cannot inherit the Iron Throne, so maybe Rhaenys is warning her here when she tells her,
"Men would sooner put the realm to the torch than see a woman ascend the Iron Throne."
Rhaenyra can learn a lot from the Queen Who Never Was, but more on that once we get to the video for her character. Rhaenyra is very prominent in the trailer, which leads me to believe that she's probably among the characters with the most screen time in season 1, which of course makes sense. She's one of the absolute main characters. I mentioned earlier that House of the Dragon changed the age of some of our characters, and I think that's mostly because of the rivalry between Rhaenyra and Alicent, who will also have 2 versions in season 1. It's simply more appealing if the age gap isn't as big. You get away with it in book form, but watching a little kid beefing with a teenager can get very silly very quickly, so I understand this decision. We can also see Alicent charging at Rhaenyra in the trailer. This goes down differently in the source material and will give us our first insight to the way Ryan Condal and the writing team approach their own creative choices. Another thing that's going to be very interesting is Rhaenyra's relationship with Daemon and how much drama it'll cause in the Red Keep. They oftentimes rode their dragons together, which could actually be what this scene right here is. They of course end up getting married, but it's very important to establish their bond in advance. And that is pretty much how I would describe Rhaenyra's first season. A big, establishing introduction. Don't expect her to participate in any big battle sequences or any crazy action scenes. Remember when we were all hyped for Dark Sansa after season 4? The transition from Millie Alcock to Emma Darcy is likely going to be like that, but actually delivered and not abandoned. It's such an interesting character and I could go on, but then we would drift right into the spoiler section, so
not today.
That doesn't mean that we are never going to talk about the source material, however. Let me know down below if you would want a big, spoiler-heavy breakdown of the story in an upcoming video. For now, let's get to our last point for today's video. Who is going to play Rhaenyra Targaryen? That will be the 22-year-old Millie Alcock for the younger version and the 29-year-old Emma Darcy for the adult version. They were both relatively unknown prior to getting the role of Rhaenyra, but HBO has proven time and time again that they are more than capable when it comes to casting these roles. That was never a problem in the original show. Nina Gold did an amazing job there. The new woman behind the desk is now Kate Rhodes James. She is the new casting director and she's been working in the industry for decades. We of course can't judge it by the quality of acting yet, but I think they did a phenomenal job in terms of looks here. It's very believable that young Rhaenyra becomes adult Rhaenyra. Let's see how it turns out. And that is all I have for today. Thank you guys for watching, I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, feel free to subscribe so you won't miss the next couple of videos of this series. We only just scratched the surface, I've got a lot of them coming out soon. You might have guessed it, but yes, Alicent Hightower is going to be the next one for the Greens. It just fits, doesn't it? Take care and see yous later.